Shabbos. Sing a little Shalom Aleichem. Welcome the angels. Wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this, good Shabbos. From our dining room table, from our candles here to you. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Boachem LeShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni LeShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Tzedchem LeShalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Well, welcome, friends, near and far, in Chicago, around Chicago, across the universe. Happy to be bringing in the Holy Shabbos with you right now. I am surrounded by angels, like human angels. I got like one sitting on the floor over here doing Legos and another one over here looking at a book catalog. Hi, angels.
Hi, Mom. We're not angels.
Got some candles lit behind me. If you have not lit candles, maybe go like grab a candle, light it up, bless it. It's always awkward, you know. I feel like when we do these virtual services, which I love and I'm so happy we do, it's the one time we do something that kind of feels like it goes back right into the pandemic and like we're all doing the same thing as opposed to people wherever you are watching virtually, you know, watching a live thing happening, you know, for people in real time. Right now, we're all experiencing the same thing, which is me at my dining room table with these angels and you wherever you are. And so I want to ask you, how was your week? How are you? Tell me the highlight of your week. You want to do Kiddush? Yes. We're going to do Kiddush in about 1 minute. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for being patient. Hang on. So I want to ask you the highlight of your week, you know, and also like something maybe you're happy to leave behind, like something you are happy to exhale and let go of. Goodbye. See you never. You happened in the past, and now I'm bringing in a new and open space. We did this exercise this week during a staff retreat at Mishkan, where we passed a plate around. We wrote our name on a plate, and then we passed it around to all 17 people in the room, or 20 people, however many people there were. And the idea was, you know, you start with a blank plate and your name on it, and then you pass it to the person on the right, and then one by one, everybody around the circle just writes a word or two, maybe a sentence, reflecting back to you the good they see in you. And so by the end of this, everyone has a plate that is just full of their beauty and their gifts and their talent reflected back to them. Shh. Hang on. Oh, Judah just said, who said I like your shoes? And I love that one. That's my favorite one because I am guessing that person did not know me very well. didn't know me enough to be able to say anything about my personality, or maybe they knew me very well and didn't want to say anything about it, but they liked my shoes and they reflected that back to me, and I appreciate that. I don't know who wrote that. Okay, shh, yeah. So, Hakarat HaTov is a Jewish value. Hakarat HaTov is a Jewish value, and it means, you okay?
Yes.
Recognizing the good. Hakarat HaTov, recognizing the good. And so I wanna invite you tonight. Here, we're gonna do it in just a second. I wanna invite you. Shh, hang on. After this, I wanna invite and ask you tonight. I know that the times we are living in, when you ask somebody, how are you? Like the first thing you might want to say is, put your head in your hands and say, oh, not good. How is anybody? But I think it's so important to enter into conversations and to be able to recognize the good and celebrate the good after we do Kiddush, which is in a minute. And so if you can, if you're watching now, put it in the chat. What is something you want to celebrate, something that you want to recognize, to just Hakarat HaTov, recognize the good right now, something that's working in your life, in the world, on your street. Hey, democracy at work. 2 years ago, Henry went up and down the block collecting signatures from our neighbors to get a speed bump put in because people would drive like maniacs up and down our street, threatening the safety of any child who might want to cross the street, not to mention adults. Like you. And you. And yesterday, some guys wearing orange vests amazingly, generously, civically came and put in a speed bump on our street right in front of our house, as a matter of fact. I'm giving thanks for democracy at work. Thank you to Matt Martin's office, and thank you to the city of Chicago for building us a speed bump. What are you saying thank you for tonight? Judah and Adira, can we bless you?
Judah,
come on up.
Silly.
Okay,
Judah,
come on.
Look at this silly thing
All right.
to Lego.
Does anybody here want a blessing, or should I just do it on the computer?
Me.
All right, come on up. Come on up. All right.
I can't see it, dear.
All right. So come sit.
I can't this.
All right. Sit.
Hey, that's Mr. Chipmunk.
Okay, sit. All right.
Put it
Now,
back.
I'm saying this for you, Judah, and this for you, Adira. I'll start with Adira, and I'll put a hand out toward Adira. Yisimech Elohim Kasara Rivka Rachel V'Leah. And to you, Yisimcha Elohim Ephraim v'Chimenashe. And to both of you, Yivarechecha Adonai v'Yishmerecha, Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'Yichuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'Yasem lecha shalom. May God bless you and guard you and keep you safe and healthy. May God shine a path for you, and may you shine your own light bright in the world. May you be a peacemaker, and may peace follow you wherever you go. And I want to compliment you both on practicing piano and violin so well this week. You did a great job, and you made great improvement. Yeah. Hakarat HaTov, friends. All right, grab your Kiddush. Let's bless. Adira, you want to grab your Kiddush? Judah, you want to grab your Kiddush? It's time. All right, and I'm going to put up the blessing right here. Listen to that, Judah.
I want my Kiddush.
You're not sure if you want
I
it.
do want my Kiddush.
Because you do. I'm not sure I understand your sense of confusion about it. All right, Kiddush text for Friday night. Pull it up. Here we go. All right. All right, ready? Yom HaShishi, it's Friday night. Vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chol tzevam. Vayechal Elohim b'yom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. Vayishbot b'yom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa. V'yevarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i v'yekadesh oto ki vo Shabbat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot. Savri.
Clink.
Clink, clink, clink.
Clink.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pariha. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchelanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim כי בנו בחרת, אותנו קידשת, עם כל העמים, ושבת קודשך, באהבה וברצון, הנחלתנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת, אמן לחיים, clink.
Pink. Why is I drinking this?
And for everybody who's been asking me if you can get dessert, you may now. And if you're going to stay down here, you have to be quiet while I'm on the computer. Love you guys. Congratulations. Yasher koach. Good kiddush.
Mama, what does Z-E-A spell?
Z-E-A. I don't know where you
I
see
mean,
that.
no, not Z-E-A.
Okay.
Z-E-E.
Z-E-E. It's probably a transliteration for some Hebrew word. Zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit. Okay. And actually, I want there's a line in here in Kiddush. Let me see if I can highlight. Oh, I can. Okay. Oops. That I want to point out to everybody that explains a little bit of what I'm doing here. So, where it says Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. So, God who wants us, who loves us. V'Shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. Shabbat, I'm sorry, this keeps going back and forth. Maybe I shouldn't try and highlight it. You can see where I'm just kind of circling right here. Be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu. With love and with desire, you gave this to us. And, I have to say, as a parent and as a rabbi, especially when so much of these kids' Jewish formative memories happened during the pandemic, when so much of my time was on a computer, splitting between this and that, it's actually challenging to communicate. And all I really want to do is communicate love and desire, create and cultivate a sense of desire to do this, to create this time, to celebrate this tradition. I'm trying to do that for you and trying to do that for them. And if you haven't noticed, sometimes there's a little bit of a conflict there. And we're all just doing our best. But I hope and pray that ahava, love, and ratzon, desire to do this, desire to make this meaningful, desire to figure it out, desire to iterate week to week to week to, what works, to maybe dessert after doing the Jewish thing. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We're all just muddling through. All right. All right. Let's do another song here. There it is. I wanna sing Ana B'Koach. We often use this on Friday nights as a way of directing our thoughts and our prayer toward people who are held captive. Like actual captives, Jewish captives, and I think I've mentioned this to you before. Not just Jewish, anybody who's being held captive anywhere. I've had this paper, this little piece of this little reminder, with a picture of somebody named Yosef Chaim Ohana, who's who's 23-year-old. He's probably 24 now. Israeli who was at the Nova Festival, who is still in captivity. But, rather than people seeing if you're focusing on hostages, that means you don't care about Gazans, or if you're focusing on Gazans, that means you don't care about Israelis. This, for me, is just, it's a reminder of the tragedy of the entire situation and everybody who's suffering there. And so as we pray Ana B'Koach, these words, look at this, with the power of your right hand, we pray to loosen the bonds of captivity. Anyone who is in a situation that they can't control, that is restricting them from thriving, which in this moment includes many, many Palestinians and Israelis, Jewish and not Jewish. And every time we pray this prayer, it is a desperate plea from the soul that we may come a little bit closer to that captivity that holds everyone in that region in its clutches, releasing. May it be so. If there's someone you are praying for right now also, someone who is caught in the clutches of whether it's sickness of body or mind or spirit, in the clutches of addiction, struggling with their mental health, struggling with loneliness or heartbreak. Anyone who is struggling with unemployment or just not knowing how they're going to, pay their next rent check. We ask God to loosen the bonds of that captivity, that restriction. May God bless each and every one of them with life, with health, with recovery, with abundance. So go ahead and put the names in of anybody you're thinking of for a healing prayer right now as we sing. Ana bekoach gedulat yemincha tatir tzerura kabel rinat amecha sagvenu tarenu nora. Ana bekoach gedulat yemincha tatir tzerura kabel rinat amecha sagvenu tarenu nora. Gedulat yemincha tatir tzerura kabel rinat amecha sagvenu taharenu nora. Amen, amen. Sending refuah shalema to everyone on your lists, everyone in your lives, everyone in the world who needs a prayer and who needs healing. All right. What we thought we'd start doing with these Friday nights online is not pretending we're leading like a whole service, but rather do a little bit of music and then offer some Torah, close out with some, one more song, and then call it a night. So here's what I'm thinking about this week. This week in the Torah portion. I'm thinking about a lot of things, but we'll start here. All right. We see one of the most iconic conversations in all of history, certainly in biblical history, happen in this week's Torah portion, Vayera. Here is the scene. Abraham is sitting outside his tent, recovering from surgery on a very sensitive place on his body, especially for a 90-year-old man. And 3 men approach his tent, and he's never seen them before. And, they could be thieves, they could be robbers, they could be dangerous. But he does not approach them that way. He says, Sarah, go make lunch. He invites them in. We have guests. Wash your feet. Please, don't go on. Stay here. Let us take care of you. He is exceedingly hospitable. And it turns out, so these guests come in, and they say to him, next year, we're going to come back here, and you, my friend, are going to have a son. You and your wife, who are in your 90s, your postmenopausal wife, will give birth to a biological son, which is obviously something Abraham and Sarah had given up on long ago, thinking impossible at their age. They can't believe it. Their guests eat, they leave, and Abraham walks them out and sees them off in the direction of Sodom. And after these 3 mysterious guests leave Abraham and Sarah's tent, headed toward Sodom, God muses to God's self. Should I hide from Abraham what I'm about to do? I have singled him out, after all, that the nations of the world should bless themselves by him and his descendants by doing what is just and right. The words are tzedakah umishpat. God says, God sort of says to God's self. So God then says to Abraham, the outrage of Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, their sin so grave, I will go down there to see if they have acted according to the outcry that has reached me. And you know what happens next because Jews love this story. Abraham negotiates with God. We love this story because it exemplifies a value we hold dear, which is that no one, not even God, is above the law. So Abraham, talking to the creator of the universe, he doesn't bring bravado, although honestly the humility he brings feels a little forced. He says, "Oh God, don't mind me. I'm a little nobody. I'm just dust and ashes. However, I do have to ask, would the God of justice not act justly? Hashofet kol haaretz lo ya'aseh mishpat." Might I venture to put forth that if there are 40 people, innocent people in the town of Sodom and Gomorrah, might you spare them? And God says, for 40 people, I'll spare the towns. And then Abraham, coming forward, dust and ashes though I am, might I suggest that it's possible the 40 might lack 5? Will you spare the towns then? Yes, God says I will. What about 20? Would you spare the towns for 20? God says for 20 innocent people, I will spare the towns. And Abraham goes a step further then, now he's on a roll. What about 10? And God says, yes, for 10 innocent people among the entire city, I would spare the cities. The conversation ends at that point, and Abraham and God part ways. But this is one of the places where we get the model of Abraham, both the person who is the most hospitable in the Torah, opening up his tent to strangers, and also the upstander, the advocate for justice. The only thing is, Sodom and Gomorrah get destroyed, which begs the question, what was this sin, this grave sin or culture of sin that was so pervasive that it affected everyone? There was not an innocent person to be found. Sin so corrosive, so kaved, heavy, inextricable, so unavoidable for everyone in the town that the consequence had to be destroying it. So I want to pivot now away from Abraham to the people of Sodom. There are a few ways to learn Torah. Sometimes I say the Torah can be descriptive, meaning we learn from what the Torah says to do. Or rather, let me try that again. The Torah can be prescriptive, meaning the Torah tells us to do things, so we do it. But sometimes the Torah is descriptive, meaning characters could be acting well or not acting well. What they are doing is reflecting reality. That sometimes what we learn from Torah is simply descriptive reality. It's mirroring us to us, and that's how we learn. And sometimes we learn from seeing the heroic, courageous acts of exemplars in the Torah, and sometimes we learn to avoid the mistakes of characters in the Torah. This week we get both. And when it comes to Sodom and Gomorrah, it might be easy to think these people, these Sodomites, must just have been the most craven, evil, awful, bloodthirsty, terrible people in the world to deserve the fate they got, especially recognizing God said, I will not destroy these cities if there are 10 innocent people, and yet the cities were destroyed. But what if the Sodomites are not craven and evil of a genre we could not imagine, but rather, what if they're not that different from us? What if we need to hear this story to avoid their fate, not because we're so different from the Sodomites, but to avoid becoming them, or to see the ways in which we already have become them? So I've mostly given away my thesis here, but now I want to paint a picture, which the truth is the tradition makes really fun in a sort of twisted, macabre way, by describing the things the Sodomites did to earn this consequence. And most of this is not in the Torah, actually. The Torah gives us some hints, especially in Genesis chapter 19. But the rabbis of the Talmud and the Midrash, this is about 1,500 years ago to 2,000 years ago, kind of go wild, giving us a lot of really juicy, gory detail about these sins that led to this outcry. So let's just look at a few. Here's one. The soil of Sodom and Gomorrah was so rich and fertile that when a farmer would rinse off greens grown in the field, gold dust would shake out. And so the townspeople said, looking around, we live in a town with abundance of food and water, precious stones, pearls, gold. Any visitor, any guest or immigrant coming through here is only coming to strip us of our wealth. Come, let us make sure that our duty toward travelers, toward the stranger, is utterly forgotten. And so God, hearing this, thought, if you want to utterly forget the vulnerable, I will make it so that you are utterly forgotten. That's one encapsulation of the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. Not just selfishness, but a specific kind of selfishness. Not just not sharing abundance with strangers. Not just not sharing your abundance, but not sharing your abundance with strangers and the most vulnerable. Having so much and not seeing the abundance that you have is made holy, made meaningful through sharing it. And not just with your family, but specifically the people who can't access that wealth themselves, can't speak the language, or don't have a home, or are otherwise considered strangers or outsiders. What a contrast to Abraham, with whom we began our story today, literally opening his tent and his table to strangers. The rabbis in the Mishnah, in Pirkei Avot, describe 4 different character traits of a human being. One kind of human being says, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine. Of that person, they say, that's a wicked person. The one that says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is also yours. That person is a pious, righteous person. The one that says, what's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, is an idiot, is an Am Haaretz. That person doesn't know how the world works. They don't know what they're talking about. The one who says, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours, is a morally mediocre person. And some would say, Midat Sdom, a sodomite, a Sodom type person. Really? What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. It seems perfectly American, right? It's like the law of individualism. And so it's worth noting, Midat Sdom is not the wicked one. Midat Sdom is just the one that's indifferent to someone else's circumstances or needs or vulnerability. I do me, you do you. Your business, not my problem. My business, not your problem. And this, they say, is what leads to the downfall of society. Tomorrow, when we gather in person, I'm going to ask the crowd, how does this lead to the downfall of society? I expect people to have, more interesting answers than, some of the ones I'll hazard here, but let's just think about it for a second. What's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours. That is Midat Sdom. That leads to the dissolution, the desecration, the destruction of society. Because that's what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. Be curious to hear, for those of you who are in the chat, feel free to answer that question. How does that Midat Sdom mindset, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, lead to the downfall of society? Well, let's imagine a guy who's making toxic waste. It's his toxic waste, but he lives on a beachfront, so it's also his beachfront. He dumps his toxic waste off of his beachfront, but it's into water that's shared by everybody. Everybody drinks the water. Now everybody gets sick and might even die. And think like Flint, Michigan, individuals who shirked personal responsibility that ended up creating collective suffering. Pandemics, epidemics, when people don't have health care, and yet, for a variety of reasons, they don't have jobs, they aren't citizens, they can't get public insurance, they can't afford it, and there's an outbreak of an epidemic, purely hypothetically, if only some people in the population get vaccinated and others do not, the epidemic will rage on, right? If people just worry about themselves and not about the whole, then everyone will continue to be at risk. We are all in this boat together, right? The rabbis of the Talmud tell an actual story about a boat where there's a guy drilling a hole under his seat. The guy behind him says, "Hey, what are you doing? The guy in front of him says, what do you care? It's my seed. I'm just drilling under my seed. The guy behind him says, yeah, but when water comes in through your hole under your seed, we all go down. And Rabbi Stephen pointed out to me, what we're talking about here is when there's somebody who's like actively doing something that's destructive to society, even if they're just doing it in their own home. But what about just how we kind of collectively abdicate responsibility? Think of the number of unhoused people in Chicago who will die on our streets this winter. It's not really cold yet, but like it happens every year. And it happens every year against the backdrop of how many hundreds or thousands of beds in homes and unused rooms and even coach houses, hotel rooms, and floors of buildings that are open. But not to strangers, not to outsiders, not to people not like us. This is Midat Sdom. Here's another Sodom story from the Midrash. When a poor traveler came through, the people of Sodom would give him $1 with their own name written on it. When the traveler would use the money to buy bread, nobody would sell it to him because he was an outsider. Eventually, when the person died of hunger, each Sodomite would go and reclaim his $1. Funny joke to play on outsiders, right? Haha. No, obviously it's not funny at all. In Sodom, cruelty was a sport. Barbarism. Because they could. Because it was funny. There was a kind of social agreement that enabled bullying and meanness. It was normal. It was the law. The sin that you might think of when you think of Sodom has to do with sex, right? But that's only an issue because, and this is what you read in Genesis 19, only an issue because the townspeople forced guests coming into their city into it violently, coercively, in a gang mob situation. That's the sin of Sodom. When cruelty and violence and bullying and coercion and shaming become normalized, and anyone who goes against it is punished, that's the sin of Sodom. Abraham's great niece is Lot's daughter, Pelotit. The Midrash tells us that she too heard about this policy of starving needy people. She thought it was wrong. She saw a poor man languishing in the town square for lack of food, and she felt sorry for him. And the next time she went to the well to get water, she brought a little bread in her pitcher and sneaked it to him. And after some time, she kept doing this, but the townspeople started to wonder, hey, why doesn't that guy in the town square die? How does he stay alive? And when they determined the reason, they took Pelotit out and burned her alive. And as she was being taken out to be burned, she prayed. She cried out, God of the universe, exact justice on my behalf from the Sodomites. And the Talmud writes that her cry, tza'akata, that is the tza'aka that we read about at the very beginning when God says, the cry of the Sodomites is so great, I need to go down and see whether this outcry, what it is. I have to see it for myself. God thinks when God says that, according to the Midrash, if the people of Sodom have done what this woman cries, I will turn the city's foundations from top to bottom and bottom to top. So, here we are. Here we are, and since 2016, but really, with the rise of social media over the past 2 decades, public shaming and bullying and cruelty and humiliation have become a mainstream acceptable way of flexing dominance and power in the public sphere. And that is true here in the States. That is true in Israel. It's true in many countries around the world now. It's a scary time. That way of speaking and wielding authority just won an election in this country. And we are careening toward entering a time when policy, too, will be codified according to Midat Sdom, radical individuality to the point of cruelty that privileges insiders that privileges people who already have wealth and does not share it. This used to be fringe in our society, this kind of cruelty and humiliation as a way of, way of interacting socially. It would never have been acceptable for a leader to behave that way in the public square, let alone a president. But this has gone from the fringe to the norm. And our tradition emphatically, pleadingly, desperately asks us to see it, first of all, to recognize it for what it is, and to know how dangerous it is. It's not just words. It's words that leads to violence and leads to people getting hurt. And not to get sucked in, not just because individuals get hurt, though they do, but rather because this is what will lead to our collective destruction. And I know that sounds dramatic, but this time it won't be by God's hand, rather by our own, and by a kind of day-by-day dissolving of the social bonds that hold us in life and in love and in happiness and in community and in allyship with other groups and in trust in a justice system that holds people accountable and in government that functions to serve people, all people, and that nobody is above. When the bonds of trust that hold a society together corrode and break under the weight of a mindset of scarcity and suspicion of the other and individualism and cruelty and callousness, my friends, if we go down this road, there will be nothing left to save. If you take the vertical God out of the story and simply observe that something awful was going on in Sodom and Gomorrah and those cities were destroyed, perhaps this is what that looked like. A slow and eventual corrosion and destruction from the inside. So, what do we do? Well, one is, let us not normalize any of this. Let us not say to ourselves, it is what it is. I'll just keep my head down and in 4 years I'll vote for a different government. It's easy to put responsibility of changing course onto the heads of those who have the most power. Sure, it's harder to make change where we can, or it may feel that way, but we need to work harder. We need to work harder. This pushing against the current means that as we walk down the street, we need to work harder to remember to catch the eyes of the person sitting outside the grocery store, to affirm their humanity and to help in some concrete way. We may need to work harder as we continue to engage on the subject of Israel and Palestine and care about the welfare of Gazans and West Bank Palestinians and Israelis, Jews and Arabs and everyone else, and not see anyone in this equation as strangers and outsiders who threaten our family, but as part of one family that lives in a place that needs our love and support, not one at the expense of the other, because all need to thrive there ultimately in order for anyone to thrive. We will need to figure out how to be like Avraham and Pelotit, which, let's be honest, Abraham did not get what he fought for. He fought hard and he did not get what he envisioned. And Pelotit did. She got justice, the justice she prayed for, but she paid the ultimate price for her principles. So let us also figure out how to resist the systems and push back against the systems that hurt people and protest, but do it in a way that affirms and preserves our humanity and safety too. And the humanity and safety of the people we are marching and protesting and resisting and organizing with. The lesson of Sodom is that when cruelty and bullying and barbarism and violence and hurting people become norms in society, if we countenance it and resign ourselves to it because it's too hard to look at it, or too hard to do anything about, then we don't need God to send down fire and brimstone. That society has already corroded and begun its own process of self-destruction. We can do better. We can be better. We can swim against the current. We have to. We have to swim and act against the examples being set from on high and set better examples for one another. Starting right here, in this spiritual community, right here, you, me, everybody watching, everybody listening, lest we forget that we are children of Abraham, of the original radical hospitality provider and justice advocate. So for the sake of humanity, ours and everyone else's, let us be ready for this. I want to invite you to take a deep breath and exhale here in this space of Shabbat together. I know we can do it. Shabbat Shalom. And now I want to transition into a song. And I feel like over the course of the last, whatever it's been, 15 minutes, I just got a cold. So don't know what that's about. All right, this tune that we're going to do here. Oh my God, this cold is going to be the death of me. I'll catch my death of cold. Here we go. This is a table song. This is a Jewish table song for Friday nights called Tzur Mishelo. There's a blessing before eating, but there's a much more important blessing for after eating, after you've had a meal, and called Birkat Hamazon. But in some Jewish cultures at different times, singing this song, Tzur Mishelo Achalnu, singing to the one who provided all of this food that we just ate, that this actually sufficed for the blessing after the meal. Since in a minute, I'm just going to pull up the words and you'll be able to see the transliteration in the Hebrew. I'm just going to tell you what the English means. Come, friends, in grateful strains, give thanks and bless the Lord, the rock whose store our life sustains, whose bounty still remains, according to his word. And then all of this is mostly just different ways of thanking God for the land of milk and honey and our ancient nation and the food that stays our hunger and the grace that provides our soul salvation. It's all good stuff, and then praise for the coming of the Messiah, like Jewish prayers do. All right. And this tune may sound familiar because we often do it for Lecha Dodi on Friday nights. And this tune was written by Peter Avniel Saltzman. And, well, if you've come to Mishkan before, you may recognize it. Tzur Mishelo Achalnu Baruchu Emunai Savanu Vehotarnu Kidvar Adonai Tzur Mishelo Achalnu Baruchu Emunai Savanu Vehotarnu Kidvar Adonai Hazan et olamo ro'enu avinu Achalnu et lachmo ve'yeno shatinu Nalkeno de lishmo unhalelo bafinu Amarnu ve'anenu En kadosh kadonai Tzur Mishelo Achalnu Baruchu Emunai Savanu Vehotarnu Kidvar Adonai V'shir v'kol toda Nevarech le'Eloheinu Al eretz chemda tova Shenimchil lavoteinu Mazon v'tzeida Hizbiya lenafshenu Chazdo gavar aleinu Ve'emet Adonai Tzur Mishelo Achalnu Baruchu Emunai Savanu Vehotarnu Kidvar Adonai. I'm going to go to the last verse. All of them sound basically the same. Yibane hamigdash ir Tzion temale V'sham nashir shir chadash Uvir na 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 ale Harachamana nikdash Yitbarach vayitale Al kos yain male Kevirkat Adonai Tzur Mishelo Achalnu Baruchu Emunai Savanu Vehotarnu Kidvar Adonai Tzur Mishelo Achalnu Baruchu Emunai Savanu Vehotarnu Kidvar Adonai. This translation stinks. I mean, somebody worked really hard to make it rhyme, but it's not nearly as, I don't know, as poignant as I would just translate the words word for word, not trying to make them rhyme. Anyway, I really like that tune, and this Zmirot, this Zemer, is where it comes from. All right, my friends, we've kind of come to the end of everything I had planned here. What we do at this point is I would like to say Kaddish for anyone who is remembering someone tonight. So take a moment now. Go ahead and put in the chat if there's anybody you want to remember out loud. And I will stand and say Kaddish for all of them. And then we'll close out with Nosei Shalom. Because Kaddish ends that way. And we always pray for world peace at the end of all our important prayers. Because we need it. All right. So here we go. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'amlich malchutei. B'chayachon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'cho Beit Yisrael. B'galau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata d'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Say shalom b'mramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'el kol Yisrael v'el kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. Amen, amen. Close out with a little say shalom, eh? May all of their memories be blessings, every one of them. Who are we remembering? David Apple or Appel, Marion, Laura Rudman, both of your parents' yard sites this week. May all of their memories be blessings. Oh, say shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Say shalom bimrama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimrama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oh, say shalom bimrama, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Shabbat shalom, y'all. Hope to see many of you tomorrow morning, where you will hear this same sermon again, maybe a little more developed or refined. If you want to send me notes, feel free. Maybe I'll incorporate them tomorrow. All right. Lots of love, everybody. Good night. Good Shabbos.